Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Rick Fussell and this is the Ingrain Workshop. Today's video we're going to be finishing up the miter saw station build. Now this is going to be part 3 of the series and will be the final video for the miter saw station build. That's coming up next here at the Ingrain Workshop. So let's start by breaking down some sheet goods. I'm going to be building 3 individual tops for the miter saw station, one for the left side, one for the right side, and then one for the middle, which is where the miter saw will actually sit. I'm going to use 3/4 inch MDF. I'm going to use 2 layers, so my countertop thickness will be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to start here at the table saw, and I'm just going to rip the MDF down to 24 inches. That's the actual depth of my base cabinets, so I'm just going to cut all my tops at 24-inch widths. With the width of all the countertops now cut, now I can focus on cutting the countertops down to a rough length. And I'm going to use my DIY track guide here and a circular saw and go ahead and cut down the lengths of all 3 countertops. Now with the rough lengths and widths of the countertops cut, I can go ahead and start gluing them up here. So what I'm going to do is just apply a liberal amount of glue between the MDF pieces. And then as far as clamping the 2 pieces together, I'm just going to utilize screws and go through here and screw the 2 pieces together, and the screws will act as my clamps. One thing I'll have to make a note of is my actual T-track location in these tops, because I want that to be a no screw zone. And you can see here I've marked on the actual MDF the lines where I'm going to install my screws, and then I've got my no screw zone laid out, and that's just the approximation of where my T-track's going to go in my countertops. I am pre-drilling and countersinking all the screws. Now these screws are going to be on the bottom side of the countertop, but it is a good idea to go ahead and countersink all the screws so your top will sit flush. With the countertops gluing up, it's time to focus my attention on the edge banding. And I thought about maybe going with soft pine and staining it the same color as my door trim, but I thought that was just too soft of a wood. So the closest wood that I could get to probably match would be walnut, but walnut's a little pricey in my workshop. So I did have a lot of cherry on hand, so I decided to go with cherry. So I'm just going to mill down some cherry to 3/4 inch. Then using my DIY track guide and my circular saw, I'm going to take and cut a factory edge on one side of the cherry. And then I'm going to use that edge to reference up against my table saw fence. And then I'll go ahead and rip all my pieces at 1.5 inches. Now with the glue on my tops dry, I can go ahead and trim them down to the final length. Now when I glued these up, I left a 1/16 inch overhang, so I didn't have to worry about gluing them up flush. So I just let them overhang on one side, and now I'm back here at the table saw trimming up that edge to get back to a factory edge on both pieces of MDF. And now I'm cutting it down to its final width. This is going to be the miter saw top, and for the miter saw top, the width wasn't exactly 24 inches like the previous tops, because it's a little bit narrower since it's where the miter saw is going to sit, and because it's a shorter length, I'm able to go ahead and cross cut it here at the table saw as well. And the overall dimensions for the miter saw top was 22.5 inches by 29 inches. Next, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process for the right side and the left side tops. Again, I'm cutting these at roughly 24 inches. I think it's slightly under 24 inches, but I'm going to do the right side top, and then I'll do the left side top. Now, when I cut them down to their final lengths, both the left and the right side top, the capacity is greater than that I can cross cut here at my table saw. So as I've previously done, I'm going to have to bust out my DIY track saw guide and use that and a circular saw to cut them down to their final lengths. So the right side final dimensions was 46 1/8 by 23 13/16, and the left side was 76 1/2 by 23 13/16. I'm going to start installing the edge banding with the largest top, which is the left side top. And you can see here, I've just got a piece of scrap edge banding that I've got a 45-degree miter cut on. And then what I'm going to do is using some CA glue and activator, I'm going to take and just put just a drop on the scrap wood and then shoot some accelerator on my cut piece and glue them together. And what this is going to do is allow me to hook the edge banding on this corner of the top. Since I'm doing this by myself and this top is roughly 76 inches long. This way I can take and hook it on and then using some clamps, just clamp it in place, and then I'll be able to go down to the far end and go ahead and make my mark so I'll know where to cut the 45 on the far end of this edge banding piece. And once I have it marked here on the far end, then I can go ahead and remove the clamp and remove the edge banding piece here. That way I can go ahead and cut the other 45-degree angle on it. And you can see here how easily the scrap piece just snaps off. With 45-degree angles cut on both ends of my first edge banding piece, now I'm just going to fasten it to the top using some clamps. And again, this is just temporarily just to hold it in place so I can take again, a piece of scrap edge banding that has a 45-degree angle cut on it, and then I can test fit both corners, both this near corner, and then I'll go down and test the far corner just to make sure that the cut is correct on both ends of this first piece. Again, it's very important to get it started right. That way you'll have clean miters on all four corners. And now that I'm confident that it's cut correctly, I'm going to apply some glue and then just using the outfeed table to support the edge banding piece, I'm just going to sit it up next to the countertop and go ahead and again, using scrap wood, test fit the corners before I clamp it in place. And then once I get it clamped in place, I'll take my brad gun using 18 gauge 1 1/4" nails, and I'll go ahead and fasten this first piece of edge banding to the actual countertop. With the first long side edge banding in place, now I'm going to turn the countertop so I can work on the two shorter ends. Again, these ends are roughly 24 inches, so I'm able to just go ahead and cut a piece with a 45-degree miter on one end and then just hold it up and go ahead and mark the back side of the other end so I'll know where to make my second miter cut on that particular piece. After ensuring I have a nice tight fit here, then I'm going to take and glue it up and then just shoot it in with brad nails as I did the previous one, and then I'll do the same thing to the opposite end of the countertop. So up until this point, I haven't used a tape measure to install any of this edge banding, and I'm not about to start now on this last piece. So I'm going to flip it over, and the side that I want out, I'm facing in, and then I'm sitting the piece on top of the countertop, and then I'm going to mark the inside of the miter on both ends, and that's where I'm going to make my cut on this last board. With both miters cut, I'm going to just test fit it here, and then once I'm ensured that it's a snug fit, I'm going to glue it and nail it home. I'm going to lightly sand the top of the counter just to make sure that I get rid of all the saw burn marks that you see here on the cherry edge banding. And also when I did install the edge banding, I made sure I was proud about a 32nd of an inch. You definitely want to be proud. You don't want to be below the MDF top. So as far as the edge banding goes, just keep it proud of the top a little bit and you should be good to go. And now I'm just going to go back and sand the edging flush with the top of the countertop. So just to get a feel of how everything's fitting, I went ahead and just temporarily sat the right side, the middle, and the left side on top of the base cabinets. Now, the miter saw top, which is there in the middle, is just sitting on top of the trash can for right now. just so I can, get a feel of how everything's fitting together, and everything seemed to fit nice and flush. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start laying out the laminate for the large top, which is the 24 inch by 76.5 inch top. So what I'm doing here, you want about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch overhang on all four sides. That way you don't have to be as precise about installing the laminate on top of the top. Give yourself plenty of room to work with. Since we're going to be applying contact cement to both the countertop and the back of the laminate. You don't want to cut it the exact size or just leave yourself an 1/8 inch. Like I said, go ahead and leave yourself about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch overhang. And we can go ahead and trim it up once we get the actual laminate installed on the countertop itself. So as far as cutting the laminate, they do make a laminate cutter. But you could also do this with just a razor knife. And again, you're not cutting all the way through the laminate. What you want to do here is just to lightly score the laminate. And you might want to do this, 2 to 3 times, just scoring it nice and slow. You definitely want to have a straight edge and run the razor knife or the laminate cutter up against your straight edge, and take your time because you don't want to get off that straight edge and cut or score the laminate inside where you need it. So go ahead and make about 2 or 3 scores, and then you should be able to just bend it and it just snap off. And you can see here I'm using the end of the table or the end of the table saw just to make the bend, and then it just snaps off. And then I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process, making the long side cut. And again, I'm just taking my time, and I'll score it 2 or 3 times, and then I'll use the edge of my outfeed table to make the bend, and then just snap it off. So now with the laminate cut, I'm going to bring my countertop over to my outfeed table and just sit the laminate on top just to make sure I've got a good fit or good cut, and checking to make sure that I've got at least 1/4 to 1/2 inch overhang all the way around the countertop. Now it's time to apply the contact cement, and you can probably see here I have my workshop overhead door wide open. I have both my walk-up doors wide open. I'm wearing a full respirator, not a dust mask. And I'm just going to apply it here with just a roller. I think I've got a 6-inch foam. So I don't know if it's the MDF top or the actual foam roller, but as you roll it on, you'll see these little air bubbles come up to the surface. So I'll roll on a couple of rolls, and then I've got just a cheap chipper brush, wood chip brush. I think it's what they call it. It's maybe $1, $2 brush. And then I'll just brush out all the air bubbles. And again, like I said, I'll just put on a little bit of contact cement with the roller, and then I'll come back and hit it with the brush just to knock down all the air bubbles. And I'm going to do this for the countertop, and then I'm going to repeat the process for the actual back side of the laminate. You can see here now I'm just taking my brush and just knocking down all the little air bubbles. And this sets up probably in about 20 minutes. And I believe you have 2 hours before you have to make adhere the two pieces together. So you've got a lot of work time here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a first coat to the countertop and to the back of the laminate, wait about a half an hour, and then I'm going to come back and apply a second coat. And I'm going to apply both coats the same way. I'm going to roll on some cement, and then I'm going to take my brush, knock down the air bubbles, and then just keep doing that until I've got 2 nice coats of contact cement on both the countertop and the back of the plastic laminate. I've let my second coat dry now for about a half an hour, and you can see the kind of sheen that's on it. It's not tacky anymore. It's really dry, both the countertop and the actual back of the laminate. So now I've cut just some MDF strips, and these strips are just so I can keep separated the laminate top from the actual countertop, because once these two surfaces meet, they're not going anywhere. So you can't mess up at this point. So you have to keep the surfaces apart until you're absolutely ready to adhere the two surfaces together. So once I've got my MDF sticks in place, what I'm going to have to do, this is a pretty long piece. Like I mentioned before, I think it's 76.5 inches long. When you're working by yourself, you kind of have to be creative. So I'm really just going to roll it here onto the top and just pray and hope that it doesn't stick to any of the contact cement that's on the actual countertop. And once I get it flipped over like I did right there, now I can take and align the actual laminate to the top, making sure that I've got that 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch overhang all the way around the top. And once I'm confident that, it's lined up, that I'm not going to come short on any end of the top, again, that's why we oversized it, 1/4 to 1/2 an inch all the way around it. Then I can start adhering the two materials together. And what I like to do is I like to start in the center of the countertop. So once I've got the laminate lined up, I'm going to pull the stick out that's right in the center of the countertop. Now the stick will not adhere to the countertop or the laminate because there's no contact cement on it. And once I remove the stick, I'll just use my hand to apply pressure evenly to adhere the actual laminate to the countertop surface. And then once I do that, I like to start from the middle and work my way out to one end. So I'm going to use what they call a J roller here. And I think you probably want to apply roughly 25 pounds of pressure here. You just want to be very careful when you're rolling it out toward the ends because you do have that overhang. And if you roll it all the way to the end, most likely you'll end up chipping the laminate. So you want to make sure that you stop directly at the edge of your countertop. So again, I'm starting here at the center and then just slowly removing sticks and working my way out to the end and using the J roller as I go to apply the 25 pounds of pressure. And then I'll remove the next stick and just keep doing that all the way down. And then once I get 1/2 of the countertop installed, then I'll take and repeat the process on the other end, again starting at the middle and then working my way to the other side of the countertop. So I don't know if this next step is necessary, but I didn't want to take that chance. What I'm doing here is I'm just trimming off that excess 1/4 to 1/2 inch of laminate overhang. Now, I'm not trying to cut it flush with my edge banding, maybe a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. But I'm just trying to cut off the bulk of material that I had left over. So you can see here, I'm cutting off maybe 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, and I'm leaving myself maybe a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to bust out my flush trim router and go ahead and route a flush edge. And you can see here on the corner, I'm just taking and cutting it with a flush trim bit. It just, you didn't need to trim the excess off. But I just didn't want to take that gamble. So I just went ahead and cut it as close as I could to the edge banding, and then using the router and a flush trim bit, I'm just cleaning up the edges. And then what I'm going to do, once I've got a flush edge cut all the way around the countertop, the exposed edges, I'm going to take my trim or my palm router and I'm going to cut a 45-degree chamfer on the exposed corners. So any corner that's going to be up against the wall is going to keep this flush cut bit or this flush edge on it, and any of the exposed edges will have a 45-degree bevel cut into those, and you'll see those when I use the palm router to cut the 45 chamfer on the edges of the edge banding. Next, with all the laminate countertops done, I've got to install my center saw top. So I'm going to use 2 playing cards that I'm going to sit on top of my miter saw, and then just use a square just to get the height that I'm going to need to mount my cleats on the side of my cabinets so I can mount my miter saw top. And this way, you definitely want to be below. You don't want your miter saw top to be higher, or the top of your miter saw to be higher than your countertop. If anything, you want it a little lower so you can shim it up. So here I've got my square, and I'm just making my marks on the side of the on the side of the cabinets. And then I can just take my level out here and draw a line. And this is where I'm going to need to install my cleats. So the next thing I'm going to do is make my cleats. And I'm just going to make those out of the old edge banding that I had left over, the cherry edge banding. And you can see here, this edge banding is 3/4 of an inch by 1.5 inches. And I'm just going to run a bead of glue here and then make an L-shaped cleat and then screw them together. And then that's what I'll use to screw to the side of the cabinets. So I'm going to make 2 of these L-shaped cleats, 1 for each side of the interior cabinets. I took a piece of scrap wood and cut it down to the width of where my line was on my cabinet. That way I've got a positive reference to install the cleat. It just makes it a lot easier installing the cleat. Once I've got my scrap wood clamped onto the side of the cabinet, I can just throw my cleat up there and then screw it to the side of the cabinet. And I'll do that to both sides. And now for the moment of truth, to try to slide in the center top to see what kind of fit I've got here. And it's a very tight fit. It fit really well. I was really happy with the way it turned out. And I went ahead and set my miter saw on top of it and then marked the location of where I wanted to mount the miter saw to the miter saw top. And then I brought the top back over to my outfeed table, and using a brad bit, I'm going to take and screw 4 mounting holes for the actual miter saw through the miter saw top here. And then again, just using a square and my drill with a brad point bit. I believe it's a 5/8 inch bit. I'm going to use that to drill a hole all the way through the top, and then I'll just use mounting bolts to mount the actual miter saw to the miter saw top. So with the miter saw top complete, I'm going to have to route some grooves in both my left and right side tops for my T-track. So a pro tip here is, if you don't want to bust out your edge banding with the router when you route, use a piece of scrap edge banding and then use some CA glue and some accelerator along with some tape. That way I can glue the scrap piece to the tape. You can see me applying the accelerator to the tape. This way, when I do route, this is going to be the exit cut. It won't blow out the hardwood. If it will blow out the hardwood, but it'll be on the scrap piece and not my actual edge banding. So it'll make for a nice clean edge banding cut. And what I'm using is a 3/4 inch straight cut bit here. And the T-track is going to sit 3/8 of an inch below the top. So what I'm going to do is, for routing out this groove, I'm going to make 3 passes, and each pass I'm going to cut 1/8 inch deep. So I'll cut my first pass, and then I'll adjust my router 1/8 of an inch, make a second pass, and then adjust it again and make a third pass. And I also use some frog tape here just to make sure I didn't blow out or get any chip out as I was routing with this straight cut bit. I'm not sure if the tape was necessary or not, but again, just a precaution, just to keep any chip out of the plastic laminate. So you can see here on the exit cut, I did blow out the hardwood, but again, it was the hardwood that was on the scrap piece. If you don't use a scrap piece, this is what your edge banding on your actual countertop is going to look like. So you definitely want to do that. And then just to take it off, just take a little hammer and tap it off, and it should come off. And then take the tape off. You might have to lightly resand your edge banding, but other than that, it's no problem. And it gives you a nice clean cut on the end of your countertop, and it really makes the hardwood edge banding turn out nice. So before I install my T-track, I like to come in with just a black Sharpie and just hit the edge of my T-track groove, because you will have the side of the laminate which is not going to be black. So you're going to want to black it out. You probably won't see it once you put the T-track in, but just as a precaution, I just go ahead with a black Sharpie and black it out. And then as you can see here, I'm using black T-track, and I'm just going to test fit the T-track to make sure that it's, that the actual groove is cut deep enough and the T-track isn't sitting proud. And you'll notice that my straight edge is still in place, because you don't want to move your straight edge until you know for sure that that T-track is going to fit in that groove and you don't have to make any micro adjustments. If for whatever reason my T-track was sitting proud of the top and I needed to cut the groove a little bit deeper, I still have my straight edge in place, and it wouldn't be anything for me to just increase the depth on my router and make another pass and cut out another 32nd of an inch or 16th of an inch or whatever. But in this case, the T-track fit fine, and I'm just using a piece of scrap ply, 3/4 inch plywood, just to hammer it down and get it in place before I go ahead and screw. But because of the length of this countertop, I am going to have to cut one of the pieces of my T-track. So I think I've got two 4-foot long T-track pieces. So on one of the 4-foot pieces, I am going to have to cut. And you can see me in the background here. T-track is aluminum, and you can just cut it with a miter saw, and that's what I'm doing here. With my T-track cut and in place, I'm going to use my drill with a self-centering bit and go ahead and drill out all the holes in the T-track. Now with the holes drilled out in the T-track, I'm going to use some 5/8 inch screws and just hand screw them in. I don't think you'd probably want to use an impact driver or a drill. You just want to go ahead and screw them in by hand. And these are zinc screws, and just like with my truck, it's a no chrome zone. I like my truck blacked out, and I like my countertops blacked out, just like my truck. So what I'm going to do is go back and take with the black permanent marker and then just paint over the heads of these screws to make them black. With all three countertops complete, I'm going to use this wipe on poly. Now, I'll be honest, this is the first time I've used this. I wasn't sure what the outcome was going to be, but I was kind of impressed with the look. I went ahead and just, again, wipe it on with just a cloth rag. I went ahead and wiped on one coat, gave it a couple hours to dry, and then wiped on a second coat. And you can see here, it really darkened up the cherry, and I think it made it kind of blend in with the wall color a little bit better. So I'm very happy that I chose the cherry hardwood for my edge banding instead of using the pine and staining it the same color as the base cabinets. And as you can see here, I really think it just came out really nice, and I'm just very happy with the way it turned out. So I went ahead and made sure when I installed my miter saw that I had full range of motion with the actual angles that I'm going to need to cut. And this miter saw cuts 50-degree angle from the left and then a 60-degree angle from the right. And I've got plenty of room to go ahead and make the adjustment on these saws to make those cuts. So now that I've got the countertops adjusted so I can move my miter saw to the angles that I need, I'll go ahead and permanently fasten the tops to the cabinets. And again, I'm just using 1 1/4 inch screws, and I'm just screwing the countertops through the top stretcher of both the front and the back of the cabinets, and then doing this on both the left side and the right side. I'm not permanently affixing the miter saw top because I am going to have to come back and make some adjustments and do the dust collection and all that. So at this time, it's just slid and just sitting on top of the actual cleats, but it is not fastened to the cleats at all. And this will permanently affix the left and right side tops to the base cabinets. So does this really complete the miter saw station build? Not really. There's going to be a lot of upgrades that I'm going to do in future videos. So if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and click on that bell icon. That way you'll be notified of all these upcoming videos. I'm going to be doing future videos on the actual Bosch axle arm miter saw. So I'm going to be doing a tool review on that. I'm also going to be upgrading the dust collection system for the miter saw. So I'm going to have to be adding some dust ports and stuff and probably a downdraft to the back of the saw. So stay tuned for those videos. I'm also going to be building a flip top stop block that's going to run along the T-track on both the left side and the right side of the miter saw, and then also put a tape measure on both sides of the miter saw. So I'm also going to be doing organization videos for the drawers and the cabinets part of the build. Then I'm also going to be building wall cabinets, and then between the wall cabinets and the actual countertops, I'm going to be building storage for sandpaper, for screws, nuts, bolts, and then probably on this side of the miter saw station between the wall cabinets and the countertop, I'm going to be building a charging station for all my drills and batteries and all that. So definitely stay tuned for those upcoming videos. So I really hope you like the miter saw station. I think it came out pretty good. I think this was the look I was looking for with the rustic theme. That's kind of how I've designed my whole workshop, under the rustic barn type theme. Hope it gives you some ideas on how you can build your own miter saw. Well, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope this video gives you some ideas on how you can build your own miter saw station. And if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments section below. I try to answer all the comments. Now, this is a 3-part series, and I've got them saved under my shop organization playlist. If you're new to the channel and you like DIY and woodworking projects, then I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button. It's free and painless, and I'd also ask that you click on that bell icon. That way you'll be notified of all our upcoming videos. To all my existing subscribers, I really appreciate all the support you've given this channel. Now, if you want to know the tools and equipment that I used in this video, I'll leave links in the video description below to where you can pick them up. Again, I'm Rick with the Ingrain Workshop. Until next time, have a wonderful day and God bless.